Hello, everyone. We're going to get started. My name is Stephanie Bruneau, and I am part of the 3D Systems Software Product Marketing team. We are thrilled that you could join us for the Geomagic Wrap Internal and Channel What's New webinar. We hope that you'll find the next hour to be a valuable investment of your time and that by the end you'll be as excited as we are. Your presenter today is going to be Greg George. He manages our application engineering team. He will be going over all the new features and enhancements with you, as well as providing coinciding demonstrations along the way. If you have any questions during the presentation, please feel free to type them into the Q&A panel that's located in the top right corner of your screen. We will answer all the questions we can at the end of the presentation, and anything we don't get to will be handled individually after the fact. Just as a note, this webinar is being recorded for future use and distribution, so all attendees are automatically muted. Without any further delay, I'll hand it over to Greg to tell you all about what's new in Geomagic Wrap.
Thanks a lot, Stephanie. This is Greg, and we're going to go ahead and start off the PowerPoint just by talking about the outline of what we're going to discuss today. So I'm just going to introduce a little bit about Wrap, and then we're going to talk about what new features are in this version, and then we're going to discuss how those features influence some new tools that we're using, and then I'm going to do a live product demonstration here at the end. So the first thing we wanted to do is talk about how Wrap fits inside of the 3D Systems end-to-end manufacturing solutions workflow. As many of you know, that the Wrap product fits in the digitize and some of the design area, but I always like to stop and just point that out, that what product I'm presenting, what categories that it fits in. So this one is primarily fitting in the digitize and then a little bit of the design area, but primarily the digitize. And as many of you guys know, we have products that address all of these different categories between the design, simulate, manufacture, inspect, and manage. So what is Wrap? The first thing I wanted to do is just make sure that we're all on the same page. A lot of people on this call are very familiar with this product. The way I like to describe it is it's the industry's most powerful 3D scanning toolbox. And really what it's designed to do is capture information and use that toolbox of information and output this data in a variety of different fashions. So as you can see on the left-hand side, on the right-hand side, we have a actual scan with color of that object on screen there. So that is a color scan, and that kind of points to a few of the different features that we're going to be talking about today that are enhanced. But before I start, I'll talk about three major workflows with Wrap. The first one at the top there is scanning and collecting real-world objects, and then processing those objects into polygons, and then from there outputting them in a variety of different fashions, CNC and 3D printing, as you all know that we're famous for. And the second one is capturing the real-world objects and then processing that mesh into a surface, and then saving that surface out to go on to your CAD package or other manufacturing solutions. And then the last one here is scanning and capturing that information into a mesh and then using it for rendering or visualization. So these three major workflows are what the Wrap product addresses. Just to give a little more depth on those three different workflows, this is just a few images to describe different options for capturing information, preparing that information, and then in this instance, printing it on the right-hand side on one of our projects. The second workflow here is capturing that information to extract features or sketches or surface models and then saving those out as CAD. So that's still a workflow that we offer with this product. And then the third workflow here is, as I mentioned before, scanning that information, processing it into exact surface models, and transferring that to a CAD package or other software. So let's get to some of the new features of this product release. So as you can see at the top, we have the UV map creation. So we've enhanced some of the UV texture maps and the tools that import that information and edit that information. So you'll see here in my live presentation how those work out. But we have a lot of people that are capturing more color data from different types of scanners. And then the ability to edit that texture information is very important. Um, the second one is another popular one that we would receive quite often is this unroll functionality. And this, as I'll show here in a few minutes, really takes objects that are cylindrical or about an axis and then unwraps them and allows you to unroll them. So I'll show that here in a few minutes as well. Now we've carried over some dimensioning tools in here. So you have some basic dimensioning tools in the analysis tab, which is nice. And then under that, we have this crease angle selection tool, which you may be familiar with as we have that type of tool in another product of ours. And I'll show you a little more. And then we updated our scripting. So we just updated a few things, and we now support Python 3.4 and as well as a variety of other things. So under the UV map creation, I just wanted to give you just a picture here of how the interface looks. So we're giving you a lot more control of how you load and manage your texture maps. And then we even are giving you the ability to realign them or resegment them based on features. And then we give you some tools to help you repair those things and troubleshoot them. So that way we can transition those things over to, for example, color 3D prints. In the dimensioning section, so you'll recognize a lot of these tools here. You have the ability to select scan data and create dimensions directly on that information. So you can see on the right-hand side, you have different options here to take a look at wall thickness or capture diameters and heights of objects inside of cross sections, which helps quite a bit. And then here's a screenshot of the unroll functionality. Uh, Again, we get this request quite often, and it's really handy to be able to take a part that goes around an axis, a revolution type object, and then unroll that to a flat plane. So that's really helpful there. And then here's another example of how the unroll really had a lot more functionality than we thought once we started using it here internally. So I have this model, and I'll show how this workflow works during the live presentation part. But you can take these types of objects and flatten them, and then use the dimensioning tools on top of that as well. That helps. And then just to highlight some of the scripting functionality. So one thing that's interesting is you can create a custom ribbon. So you can create custom workflows with your scripts and apply them to different buttons in the interface. And again, just updating the classes and libraries that are exposed in our scripting 3.0, and that just helps you high-end users that are taking advantage of the scripting functionality, and it exposes more of that to you. So what I wanted to do now is load up RAP 2017 and then show some of the basic functionality that we already discussed here. So I'm going to go ahead and start out with the unroll functionality. So if I drag in this model here, you see that I have a tire that's familiar from that original presentation. And if I go ahead and turn on the world coordinate system, the way we built the tool is we're going to use that z-axis to unroll about. So if I have not aligned this yet, I could create some features. I can fit an axis to the outside here and fit a symmetry plane down the middle and then align it to the coordinate system first. And then what the unroll tool will do is use that z-axis as the unroll axis, and then it's going to use the x-axis as its starting point. So we're designing it with those expectations in mind. And once you have that alignment, you come over to the repair section, and in that drop down, we have the unroll tool located there. So I select the object on the left-hand side that I would like to unroll, and based on the coordinate system, I hit it, and you'll see that it flattens the object for me. So now if I select this y-axis and look down, you can see that I've flattened that out, and I can use this for measurement. Along those same lines, we get some applications for more maybe artistic objects or artifacts, things like that. So that's another case where if I have even an object with color, I can grab this object and then come over and hit unroll and then align to that world. And you can see that it makes it easier for me to take a look at the art and the texture that is on the object. And then you can see that it's flattened if I go to the side view there. Now, for that prop example that I had in the presentation, if I bring that in, this is a very interesting tool here. So if I, again, align this object to the world coordinate system, and then I use the x-axis is where it's going to break, I can then take this object and then unroll it as well. But before I do that, I wanted to show the crease angle tool as well. So over on the right-hand side where we have our selection tools, all the common tools that we normally use, you see here that I have this crease angle selection tool. So the idea is if I click in, it'll select one triangle, but if I click and drag up, I can flood fill that area and, and create a selection on that area. So the idea again is if I clear that selection, if I click and drag up on screen while I'm holding the button, the left click, you'll see that it'll select more or less information there for me. So it's a really handy tool to be able to quickly select things to create features from there. So if I come over and I select unroll, you'll see this is really interesting. I'm able to create a geometry data set where I have that boat propeller flattened. And then from here, if I want to align to this view, I can also use another new piece of functionality under the analysis section where I want to cut a section through the object. So if I come over and I say that I'm going to use a system plane, and I can just select which system plane I want to use. And as many of you guys know, if I hold control, I can drag this cross section up and down. I can compute that cross section. And then I can come put 2D dimensions on that cross section. So right inside of wrap, you can see some familiar tools here. If I want to grab a horizontal dimension, for example, and say pincers inner, and I'll switch over to my rectangle selection tool, I can window in and make a inside dimension here between those two fins. And again, this would be something that I may not even be able to do otherwise. Now, if I wanted to use pincers inner and then switch to pincers outer for this side and measure from the front tip to tip there, you can do that and create all kinds of different dimensions between these. Now you do have the ability to do constructions as well. So if I said I want to do a line construction, I want to create a horizontal line here and just create one that butts up, a horizontal line that butts up against all of these. And I can come over and say, maybe I want to make an angle measurement. And if I create a selection here, and then I can say I want to measure from that selection to that bottom plane. So you see I can create angle measurements as well. So there's lots of functionality here. If I hit next and OK and accept that, on the object tree, you'll see that we just have the cross sections that I can always go back and check out again if I need to. And then I can even turn them on visually just to see them in reference in 3D. So you can see I created those dimensions there in 3D. So that is the cross-section functionality. And as well, just to highlight a few other things in there, I have measure distance from a feature as well. So if I needed to extract a feature and click on different points, I can create some 3D dimensions along with those 2D dimensions there. So now another major enhancement, and this is a collection of enhancements that I wanted to demonstrate, is the ability to edit texture information. So you can see here that I have a very basic model, but you'll see here why I'm using this in a second. So if I come over to the tools section, we usually have a color palette in here, but you'll see that it's an expanded color palette now. So this object has no color at the moment, but if I want to generate a color texture, I can do that by coming over and hitting generate color texture, and I can dictate how many texture maps, a minimum pixel size, and then what my resolution is going to be for that. I can also tell it to observe existing boundaries. So if I have boundaries that are on the object already, it'll adhere to that with its UV space. So if I hit OK, hit apply and then OK, you'll see that I have a blank canvas that I can work with. So the first thing is we're giving you some tools to troubleshoot the texture if you need to take a look at what the textures are. So if I come over to manage texture, you'll see that by default right now, we just have one 1024 block of texture space that we're using. And many times when we're handed models, polygon models that have texture color on them, sometimes there's an issue between the geometry and the texture that creates an issue, and we can't figure out exactly what that is unless we have some tools to troubleshoot that. So under the view, we have a UV mode, and I can turn on face color for one, and it's going to show me how the software in this instance automatically broke up the texture for this object. So this will just tell me the segmentation. So I know what blocks of color, what areas of this texture apply to which areas on the model. Now that is helpful to know what they are, but we also built in this tool called UV chessboard. And what this is used for is sometimes you may have a wrinkle in the texture or something like that where I'm trying to apply a texture to a very complicated area of a model. And when I have checkerboard or chessboard, I can actually see a wrinkle very clearly. In this instance, I don't really have many issues, but it makes it very easy to troubleshoot that. And then, of course, I can switch to continuous as well. So I can take a look at that. So once I have that, you'll see that maybe I don't want all those splotches to describe this outer sphere. I want that to be more orderly. So in order to work with that, what we did is we created this tool called Feature UV. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to select this area. I'm going to say I want to select that whole bounded component. And I'm going to come over to Feature UV. I'm going to tell the software I want to use this sphere to restructure that selected area in a UV map. So you'll see here in a second, I'm going to go ahead and hide those and clear that selection. If I go back over to manage texture, the first page has my first block. My second page has got a second block for the sphere. And you'll see it'll automatically highlight which one covers which. So if I come over again to chessboard, you'll see now for the first block and the second block, which direction the grids are facing there. And for the outer section, you'll see that it goes around the outside because that's the way I created that sphere. And what this allows me to do, because it restructured that texture map, I can come in and very easily edit that texture map now. So if I come in again to manage texture and go to the second section, you'll see here that it is a texture map that is 256 by 1024 by 3. So if I go ahead and I hit save, and I just save this out as a bitmap, I uh, JPEG, PNG, any of those. And then what I can do is I can come over to, for example, Photoshop, and I can come in and I can edit this texture or apply any texture that I download or create inside of Photoshop. So in this instance, I got this orange texture, and then I can go ahead and save that out and then come over to the orange again and just navigate to my folder. And I'm going to grab this one right here that I created earlier and apply that to the orange. So you can see that I applied that texture map to it. And again, it goes around the axis for me with a flat. So it's essentially starting and wrapping around in this direction. And it's all based on how I created that sphere that is on top of the object for me. So that is one piece of the texture tools that we've created. The other one is I'm going to go ahead and select the top face here and say that I want to do a project image. Now we've had this tool around for a long time, but what you can do with the project image is you have the ability to edit it after the fact. So in this instance, what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab that internal orange picture and I can click common points that will dictate where this texture map is going to be applied and how it's going to drape over the model. So if I come in and I just call out those and I hit register, and what it's going to do is drape that on top of the model for me. And then if I hit apply and get out of it here, you'll see that it applied that to the face of the model. But one thing that we have is it's not exactly applied the way I want to. So historically, what we would have to do is redo that or just do a better job to begin with, which can be cumbersome when you're trying to apply textures to the model. So right after the feature UV tool, we have the ability to do what we call an adjust UV. So if I come in here, I can select an area that I want to work with and I can move, deform. So we'll start out with move. If I just click and move, I can drag that texture around on the surface. And as you can see, my problem here right now isn't that I need to move it into the right position. Maybe I need to rotate it. So if I can click an anchor point, and then I can even rotate it around that anchor point to get a more ideal location. Or you can do a directional scale, which is interesting as well. So if I go in this direction or that direction, I can even scale it in one direction or the other. And I can even do two at once. So this uniform scale and rotate, I can apply both of those. But one of my favorite ones here is just the ability to deform an area. So the way this tool works here is I can essentially come in and click and drag and move this texture color around on the outside and create a more ideal look to what I'm trying to create here. So if I come manipulate the texture map and move this around, you can see I could spend all kinds of time doing this, but it just gives you the ability to edit these different texture maps on the different faces and create something that is more realistic here. And again, you can see how this applies to the rendering world as well as the printing world. So I have the ability to apply textures and edit them and move them around. And then we broke out the painting tools. So if I want to paint over top, these are all still the same. So if I come in and I create a color and I can draw over and create a color directly on top of the surface of the part there. And then if I wanted to adjust colors too, I can make them brighter, add more contrast, and as well as other things. So I can come into the HSL, I can adjust the histogram things like that. So we give you all that control in here. And then if I need to, I can convert to vertex color. So as many of you guys know, there are two different types of colors inside of our software. We recognize vertex color and texture colors. So if I needed to apply these textures and then convert them back to a texture color, for example, maybe saving out as a PLY, I can do that. Or we also support component color now. So if these were solid colors, component color is really handy because it'll insert a one square color inside of an entire bounded region. And then I can remove the texture altogether if I wanted to remove everything. Maybe I scanned an object with color and I don't want that anymore. You can remove it. So that's an overview of all the color functionality. And that's pretty much what I wanted to show for my live product demonstration. We had a couple more slides that I wanted to cover before we move on to the question and answer. One of them is we have some wrap related promotions. So we're offering a new enterprise bundle, which includes wrap with Design X and Control X. So you'll be able to buy all three of those together at a nice bundled price. We're also offering a bundle promotion right now that allows you to get that new enterprise bundle at a pretty aggressive price. And then we're also looking at doing this bundle amnesty program too. So if we have some customers that have strayed away, we can all go back to them with this amnesty program and create a nice incentive to get them back on board with us. So we're going to be rolling out these related promotions. Many of you may have heard from your 3D Systems Geomagic representative already. But if you don't have any of that information yet, we can get it to you as soon as possible. So we're rolling that out with this wrap release. The other thing is we wanted to make sure everyone is aware of the expected resources that you guys can expect to have. So we're going to have a new flyer for wrap that will be available to you. We're updating all of the product brochures for you, and we're going to have a product playbook too that gives you target audiences, target customers, who you should be talking to if you're looking to sell wrap. We're going to offer this webinar recording to you guys and a sales presentations and links to videos with the software functionality in video form as well. So these are all things that are going to be provided for you to help you sell the wrap product along with the enterprise bundle.